Are we?
Hey, good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Zoom. I have the pleasure of handing tonight's Zoom over to Arthur Pearsall, who's going to be sharing with us how to read scientific journals, which with our company is pretty important to at least understand because we've got a mountain of independent clinical research, so journals that have been peer-reviewed and published in medical journals, those are, proving the efficacy of our products. So Arthur's going to share with us how to read those journals if you ever get in that position of wanting to know or needing to know that. So Arthur, I'm just going to unmute you and spotlight you, mate, and let you take it away.
Okay. I'm muted. I'm muted now. Am I still muted?
No, mate, rock and roll.
That's good. Okay. Well, I've heard a lot of people talking about the scientific journals and how the scientists say, and the first thing I'd ask is, well, which scientists and when did they say it and where is it published? So to read a scientific paper, I've got one example here, which is the to me that looks back to front. I don't know if you can read it. The American College of Nutrition Journal, and it's the effects of encapsulated fruit and vegetable juice powder concentrates on oxidative status in heavy smokers. So this was published, it should say on it somewhere, February 2011. So the first thing in a paper, a valid, well, let's say a normal scientific piece of research, is they've got an abstract. This particular one has the objective, the methods, the results, and the conclusion in that. They don't always have that. And the paper is has an introduction, the methods that they used, the dietary intake assessment, study design, biochemical analysis, statistical analysis, and results. And in the end, it comes to the acknowledgements and the references, that is the papers and books that were referred to in the doing of this research. It describes the method, the thinking behind it, and it also refers to work already done. So when you read through someone's article or piece of research, there will be in brackets usually one under methods that talk about something that is a registration number of the piece and when it was published, and the Human Ethics Committee, etc., etc. So all these, the little things in brackets with a name or something refer to something that's in the bibliography at the end. So the idea of this is that you don't just have to take it at the say-so. Somebody said, oh, look, this is terrific stuff. If you look at the research, and some of it's quite technical, so you might need a medical dictionary for some of them. But it's so that when you're reading it and you go to this piece of research that he's quoting, and you read and you click onto that and read that paper, it may have nothing to do with it, or it may have a lot to do with it. Hopefully, in all the Juice Plus research that's done through these reputable journals, hopefully they're validly cited. That is, the citation refers to what they said it referred to, or the finding, or whatever. Anyway, so then the references in the bibliography are publications that are cited, referred to in the paper, and it allows us to follow up each citation to see if it relates to the research. Now, one of the things, there are some warnings when reading scientific or so-called scientific papers. The language is quite even and academic, and the purpose is not to be emotional. So if there are lots of value judgments like, this is a baseless claim, or emotional language like, no, this is absolutely astonishing, and also sort of pejorative phrases like big pharma or profit-driven or suggestions of conspiracy raise warning bells, which is not to say that whatever the piece you're reading is not accurate. The quality may be quite good, but if it doesn't conform in a scientific sense, if its format is not such as would be accepted by a proper peer-reviewed journal, then you can either disregard them or put them away awaiting further light. Science asks questions, and generally the answer is the one that, when you conclude with your theory, that it has the fewest number of questions. So scientific method doesn't prove anything, it only disproves. And so when people say, our science has proven this and science has proven that, well, it's not strictly accurate. There's a notion of Occam's razor. Occam was I think, late 19th, early 20th, well, he may have been earlier, I don't know when he was, but his razor was, how many questions are left unanswered and how important are they? And so if you have one or two unanswered questions that don't seem important, you can say, well, this is a good theory. Otherwise, you need to go and test again. I did actually look at a few things on the net to see if I could get more clarity. And there's one on evaluating a scientific paper and another one called The Logic of Science. And I've sort of summarized it, and I can share that afterwards. So if you want to go in and have a look, The Logic of Science is quite a long article, but I've just summarized the headings. There are 10 headings. I think the author is quite a conservative, scientific, observational, and the language being important for him. And there are some, if you go to that link, you can read right through it. It's about 9 pages, but it does give a very clear indication. However, he's quite condemnated in a subtle way of some of the sort of wilder sort of claims that people make on the internet, which is fair enough. But if you want to go further, you can look at those. I think that's pretty much it. Oh, well, I suppose the other thing is I had a look at ScamWatch, which there's someone who badmouths Juice Plus all the time, and I looked through his thing and his piece just to see how much he conformed to scientific method. And really, he's quite a good poser, really. He has lots of references, but when you look closer at them, they tend to be Home Beautiful and New York Times and Reader's Digest. And they're not really, if they're in your bibliography without good reason, and that's the sort of thing you're relying on, that ain't scientific. And so we can disregard it. Anyway, I think that'll do. Any questions or arguments?
Mate, thanks for sharing that. That's awesome. When I first started working with the Juice Plus company, I not only didn't know what a medical journal was, I hadn't even, as a fitness consultant, learned anything about nutrition. So possibly the first 2 years working with the company was an education pathway for me on nutrition, human physiology, disease and disease prevention, and a massive education into understanding what medical journals were, what the significance of being published in a medical journal was, and also trying to, as you were talking about before, read through them. And 100% agree with you, mate. There's a language in there that I don't even understand. But what I learned was if the brand name is mentioned in that introduction, that's a good start, because that journal is now talking about your brand being the product used or the subject through this study, which is really significant, because straight away you can rule out that paper being borrowed research for our brand. So if you go through every journal that Juice Plus has been published in, you will see Juice Plus, the brand name. It's also referred to as, I think what you mentioned before was vegetable concentrate and fruit concentrate, which is amazing. Like, no one's got it. So straight out, the stuff you've shared, I think, helps us decipher borrowed research from, real research on a brand name. The other thing I learned was to literally go straight down to the conclusion, and generally that's written in a language that I and many other laymen can understand, and it sort of just summarises what they found it to do. And as you say, any words in there you're not sure of, you can go to a medical dictionary and qualify those words and get a greater understanding. So, often you'll see in the journals where Juice Plus are in, oxidation is a word often used. So if you don't know that, you can look up that word and find that out. So
the other thing I should have mentioned is that two things you should find on there is who funded the research, and if it's Juice Plus, it's NSA or something like that. If they don't say who funded it, then they're trying to hide something.
Yeah.
And the other thing is there's a declaration of if there's no conflict of interest. They say they have to be able to show the publication that their research has no conflict of interest. In other words,
mate, they are two really important things for me through my journey with Juice Plus and people who are maybe skeptical around it. Is 100%. People used to say, "Oh, Juice Plus funded it," and I used to sort of get a bit anxious around that. But the reality is, who else is going to spend millions of dollars every year? Those research institutions are. They're full of, and I say this with all respect, they're full of university geeks that want to be on top of their game and shoot the next Nobel Prize in their field of study. So they're not going to pull that money out of their own pocket, but they'll happily scrutinise, and as you said, with no vested interest, because once it's published, as you know, it's out of our hands. We can't control that. If Juice Plus has been shown to cause heart attacks in men over 30, that'll get published. That's significant enough to those peers, who specialise in that area, to go, hey, you know what? This is significant information. The study was of that gold standard protocol. This needs to be known to the medical world. And from there, alone, you get to the rest of the world. So two good points you pointed out there, Arthur, and I think they're really important to know those two. So
if I just mention again, on that link, The Logic of Science, it's a very long article, but at the end of it, it also has about 5 people who criticise the way he writes it. Some approve, some disapprove, point out the flaws. And that's one of the things about scientific studies. People can argue with it. They don't have to agree. What they need to maybe the method of doing the research, or they came to disagree with. And you may, it depends. And as you become more used to reading them, you get to have a feeling about it fairly soon, partly on the language. I mean, you see articles in the paper and on the net all the time about all sorts of things. And but if they're using that sort of emotional language, they're trying to persuade you or sell you something.
Yeah, 100%. And I really like that. I don't know what you call it. That it's almost like a a robot approach, isn't it? You know, they're not interested. As you say, there's no emotion about it. They just go in, they follow a protocol. They want to make sure it's the best protocol, so their research is good enough to be presented to peers, and in the hope of that research being significant enough and the protocol being good enough, to then be published in that particular field, a journal that you know is on that particular field. Another thing I think before we finish up is I'd like to acknowledge you on is pointing out how there are people out there that may rubbish Juice Plus through the internet. And again, before you get on the scaredy boat, is you need to then do what you say, is look at who they are, what their background is, and every time you'll find out that they're on no credible platform from which their allegations or their opinions are being formed made. So it's really, really comforting. And for anyone that's either working with our company, started working with our company, or even just someone that's a customer and using our brand of nutrition, it's amazing. Like I love John Blair. He says with absolute confidence, we are the most thoroughly researched nutraceutical in the world. So with over 30 studies showing what Juice Plus does to improve human health inside the blood by blood analysis on humans is amazing. So if you would like to learn more about that and what that is, either get back with the person that's sponsored you in this business or get back with the person who introduced you to Juice Plus, and they can direct you to our website where you can read all that research in layman's, and also get a link directly to the journal as well. So thanks again, Arthur. That was awesome, mate. I really appreciate it. And with that,
somebody waving a hand.
That was Claire. Oh, you got a question, Claire? Yeah, let me unmute you.
I just wanted to add something. Thanks, Arthur, for that. But I've actually conducted research at the University of Melbourne.
Right.
And I had to put my proposal and present that to the Board of Ethics.
Sure, yes.
And I think that's a very big, valid point, because the research is conducted at leading universities. And they've got their name behind the research. And if that's not ethical in its conduct, they would not allow you to go forth and publish that. So I think that's a very important point, the ethics that are behind our research, as agreed or as accepted by each university.
Yeah, brilliant.
Absolutely.
That's awesome, Claire. Thank you. So I guess before we wrap it up and say goodnight, for anyone using or recommending Juice Plus, do it or use it with absolute confidence that it is what they say it is, and that in any regard you're not held responsible for anything anybody's experienced with Juice Plus. It is literally proven to be fruit and vegetable in a capsule going into the human body and doing amazing things for our gum health, skin health, our oxidative stress reduction, our circulation, our immune function, the protection of our DNA. So all these amazing things that to most people are boring to know, but have a massive impact on our health. So with that, I'll say goodnight to you guys, and once again, thanks, Arthur.
Okay,
Thank you, Arthur.
Thank you for listening. Bye.